It's February 24th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with a third anniversary of the war in Ukraine. It's been 3 years since Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a minerals deal in which Ukraine offers natural resources to the U.S. is close to being sealed, though security guarantees promised by the U.S. remain uncertain. The Trump administration has hinted that there will be U.S. government support if South Korean firms invest over $1 billion, suggesting a budget standard for the first time under Trump 2.0. The very final hearing of President Yoon's impeachment trial takes place on Tuesday. One last chance for the South Korean leader to stress the legitimacy of declaring martial law before the Constitutional Court decides on whether or not they should step down. The U.S. and Ukraine are nearing a deal that will allow Kyiv to provide Washington with rare earth minerals rights as a compensation for billions of dollars in military aid Ukraine has received. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, U.S. Congress has approved some $183 billion worth of assistance for Ukraine. U.S. President Donald Trump has sought a deal that would not only have Ukraine repay the U.S. for its financial support for the years, but more on top. The deal calls for the U.S. to take 50% of Ukraine's mineral and natural resources revenues worth $500 billion. But the deal would include not only revenue from rare earth, but uranium, lithium, oil, gas, and even some port revenues. The deal also specifies that U.S. companies must hold 50% ownership of Ukraine's rare earth elements deposits. This will allow the U.S. to receive more than 3 times what was given to Kyiv for its military and humanitarian support in the past 3 years. While Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky initially rejected the deal, calling for security guarantees, reports indicate that a deal may be near. Speaking to CNN on Sunday, U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, said the agreement is expected to be signed sometime this week. Meanwhile, President Zelensky has offered to resign from office in exchange for a peace guarantee and Ukraine's membership in NATO.
If it's about peace in Ukraine and you really want me to leave my position, I am ready to do that. Secondly, I can exchange it for NATO membership if there is such an opportunity. I'll do it immediately without a long conversation about it.
However, earlier this month, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said Kyiv joining NATO was unrealistic, shooting down any prospects of Ukraine's membership. Washington and Moscow will hold talks on improving bilateral relations in the coming days. The Kremlin said that the meeting will involve the Russian Foreign Ministry and the U.S. State Department. It's been reported that the two sides have already begun talks to schedule a summit meeting with Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Just in time for the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, peace talks will commence, with Washington taking the leading role in dialogue, as Trump touted. But will those peace talks guarantee peace? Let's turn to Dr. Robert English this morning. Welcome back, Dr. English.
Nice to be here.
So preparations are well underway for a face-to-face meetup between the leaders of Washington and Moscow. How much progress do you think Trump and Putin can make in their first summit?
I don't think they'll actually meet until their deputies have worked out the broad outlines. They don't want to come together and have a failure. It would be embarrassing for both. Trump is extremely conscious of that as a longtime business leader. So they will have to work out things like NATO membership, how long of a moratorium on Ukraine possibly reapplying to join, the actual line of contact, how much territory will be traded or returned, and of course, the nature of a peacekeeping force. We keep hearing talk of security guarantees. The United States has made it clear that we won't put troops in there, so it's up to the Europeans. the U.S. will sell more weapons. And I stress sell, because obviously they're not being gifted any longer. And so some combination of weapons and European troops will have to suffice for Ukraine to essentially defend itself with a little bit of European support.
Well, Ukraine's clearly not happy here that it has no role in the peacemaking process at the moment. When do you think Ukraine will be invited? Is that when Trump and Putin are done making their own deals?
You know, it's interesting. There are two negotiations going on now, and Ukraine is part of one of them for sure. Of course, it'll be Russia and the United States, that is Putin and Trump, working out the broad outlines that I just described.
Right.
But unless Ukraine signs on, there can't be a deal. And that's why Ukraine is furiously bargaining in a second set of talks over trading its mineral resources for various investments and promise of future weapons from the United States. That is a negotiation. And of course, Ukraine can hold up the other one, because if they don't agree with what the U.S. is offering, if they won't sign off on a deal, then the deal with Russia cannot go forward. So Ukraine is not powerless here. They kind of have a veto power.
Well, at the same time, isn't the U.S. pressuring UN member states to persuade Ukraine to withdraw the UN resolution condemning Russia? What is Washington's strategy here then?
This is an interesting one because it's not something of substance to the talks going on now or to the conduct of the war. It's more symbolic. Putin doesn't want to see another United Nations resolution, another one. There have been many condemning Russia and blaming it for the war, and apparently has asked Trump to see if the United States can't derail that, can't halt it. It's an odd thing that Trump would go to this much trouble and risk so much more embarrassment, because he'll be called again Putin's puppet, that he's making concessions and capitulations for something that's not even important. So it's kind of a disturbing sign of Trump's priorities that he's even willing to do this for Putin when it's not essential to the peace talks themselves.
Well, like our reporter reported just now, what Trump wants is Ukraine's minerals in return for ending the war, while Ukraine is insisting on security guarantees, like you mentioned, and investments as key conditions for a final deal. How can Trump and Zelensky then, fine-tune and narrow their differences?
It's going to be very difficult.
Indeed.
Because Zelensky has to deal with his own government. He doesn't have the constitutional right, even as the president in a time of martial law and war, to sign away his country's resources. This is something that will have to be scrutinized by the Ukrainian parliament and the various expert committees. And it's incredibly complicated, a deal of this size. And then there are questions of competitiveness. If I was a Ukrainian, I don't want to sign these resources away to American mining companies.
Of course
Many
not.
people don't know. The biggest rare earth mining companies in the world are Chinese, Australian. There are some American ones, but they're smaller and more specialized. If I'm Ukrainian, I might want the Australian or Canadian company and get a better deal that's competitive. And this is being done in like an old Soviet way of state-to-state barter. It's a very bad precedent.
Well, Trump is still very confident, even saying that Ukraine has no cards to play on the table. Is that so? Does Ukraine really not have anything to play at the moment?
Well, as I said, Ukraine has a kind of veto power. And the longer Zelensky resists, and maybe backed up by many members of the Ukrainian parliament when they see the outlines of this deal, the more they can drag this out. And Trump not only wants to be able to come to a deal with Putin, he wants to be able to boast to the American people that he kept his promise of ending the war quickly. And Ukraine can slow that down. Ukraine is able to derail it. Trump, I do not think, can just walk away out of frustration. That would be a catastrophe and a firestorm that even he would not want to risk. So the Ukrainians have some power here. They have some agency to slow things down and try to get a better deal. And you can see the frustration in Trump's behavior and his comments as they are actually doing that already.
Definitely. That's why they have to play wise and smart here. Dr. English, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
In the meantime, a Ukraine military spy chief has claimed that North Korea is supplying half of Russia's ammunition that is being used on the front lines. According to Reuters, Kirill Budanov also said on Sunday local time that North Korea has begun supplying 170mm self-propelled howitzers and 240mm multiple rocket launcher systems to Russia. The remarks were made during a press conference held on the eve of the third year of the war that began with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. North Korea, in addition to providing weapons to Russia, deployed thousands of troops last year to support Russian forces. A South Korean business delegation led by SK Chairman Choi Tae-won has met with the new U.S. Commerce Secretary, who urged investments of at least $1 billion to the United States. Our Lee Soo-jin has the details.
Newly appointed Commerce Secretary U.S. Howard Lutnick has told South Korea's business leaders that they should invest at least $1 billion in exchange for incentives from the U.S. government. The remark was made during a meeting with the South Korean business delegation led by SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won in Washington, D.C. on Friday local time. When a member of the delegation presented a multi-million-dollar investment plan, Lutnick said the U.S. seeks at least $1 billion in investment, an amount that would qualify for various forms of support from the U.S. government. This comment aligns with the America First investment policy memorandum that President Donald Trump signed after Lutnick's swearing-in ceremony. That memo states that foreign investments of at least $1 billion may qualify for expedited fast-track regulatory approvals, making it easier for investors from allied nations to complete deals quickly. Lutnick also stressed during the meeting that investments must deliver visible results within Trump's term, such as breaking ground on projects within a year of committing funds, hinting that mere investment pledges without timely actions would be unacceptable. Che, who met with reporters at the two-day Trans-Pacific dialogue that began on Friday, said that while the U.S. wants more production facilities to be built in the U.S., incentives must also be provided to Korean companies. He also added that the delegation achieved what it set out to do and that the U.S. was interested in the 6 sectors that were discussed, which include shipbuilding, energy, nuclear power, AI and semiconductors, and mobility, and materials, parts, and equipment. A White House official who was also present at the meeting echoed this sentiment, saying that while the U.S. has held over 20 economic delegations, the meeting with the South Korean delegation was the most productive. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol will deliver his closing statement at the final hearing of his impeachment trial on Tuesday, after which the justices will deliberate on whether or not the leader should be removed from office. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
President Yoon Suk-yeol will have one last chance to make his case against impeachment this week, as the Constitutional Court wraps up trial hearings on Tuesday. The 11th and final session comes 73 days after the National Assembly passed a vote to remove him from power after his December 3rd martial law order. According to the court, the justices will review the remaining evidence that hasn't been scrutinised yet before giving both the National Assembly and President Yoon's legal teams 2 hours to present their closing arguments. Then the Assembly's impeachment panel chair Chung Chung-rae and President Yoon will deliver their final statements with no time restrictions. Chung is expected to wrap up the Assembly's position that Yoon's declaration of martial law was illegal in both procedure and substance, and that his orders on December 3rd violate constitutional principles. Meanwhile, Yoon is expected to reiterate arguments previously presented by his legal team that martial law is an executive right of the president and was issued as a warning against the dominant opposition party's tyranny in parliament that paralysed government functions. Yoon has also raised concerns over national security and election fraud. As speculation grows over whether Yoon will present a political compromise or gesture, including a suggestion to revise the amendment to shorten his presidential term, his legal team said Sunday that it is not the president's style to offer conditional measures in order to avoid impeachment. The team said Yoon is currently preparing his final statement and is carefully considering various options. Once the hearings conclude, the deliberation period begins. Then Presiding Justice Chung Yong-sik will present his review before all 8 justices vote for or against impeachment. The ruling will be drafted based on the majority opinion. The court will then decide the date to announce the verdict, which is expected within 2 weeks of the last hearing, likely in around mid-March. If 6 or more of the 8 justices vote in favour of the impeachment, President Yoon will be removed from office, triggering a snap presidential election within 60 days. However, if at least 3 justices oppose impeachment, the motion will be dismissed and President Yoon will immediately resume his duties. Arirang News.
Tottenham Hotspur captain Heung-min has become just the 11th English Premier League player with at least 70 goals and 70 assists. Spurs play Ipswich Town away on Sunday, and Son contributed with 2 assists in the 4-1 win. And this gives him an EPL total of 126 goals and 71 assists, just behind current Premier League stars Mohamed Salah and Kevin De Bruyne. It's also the 5th season the Son has scored and assisted at least 10 goals. In a remote village here in the country, there is a group of rappers who are eager and passionate just like any other artist. Except there are granny rappers who are proving that it's never too late to learn. Our Park Kwon-woo tells us more.
A community center in a small rural village of around 100 residents. This is where Suni and the Seven Princesses, a hip-hop group of women with an average age of 85, was formed 2 years ago. Overhearing joyful voices, I peeked inside.
안녕하세요. 뭐 하고 계셨어요?
한글 공부하고 있었어요.
Their life stories, woven into their lyrics, have brought fresh energy thanks to their regular Korean classes.
When I was young, I had to walk several kilometers to school because of the war, so I couldn't study. But learning Korean has opened my eyes.
They use fun methods like singing traditional Korean songs to improve. After class, they quickly transform, donning hip-hop gear and rapping like pros, a striking contrast to their Korean lessons.
The granny rappers show us that it's never too late to challenge yourself and speak your truth through your honest lyrics. Inspired by them, today I decided to try rapping. Together with the grannies, we send our message to our viewers. 우린 너무 행복해요. 여러분도 행복하세요. Everybody happy.
This group has offered hope and inspiration in South Korea, which turned into a super-age society last year with over 20% of the population aged 65 or older. Their success has even led to the creation of other elderly hip-hop groups. And they're boosting the local economy with merchandise featuring their faces, symbolizing the region. Their influence stretches beyond the local communities, performing at venues nationwide and even spreading globally. A documentary about them, directed by a Polish filmmaker, is set to be released later this year. The filmmaker shared her inspiration behind the project.
The project is to show to the other people that we are limitless, that we can change our lives no matter in which age we are currently in. We shouldn't have any excuses for anything, right? She started the rapping band in that age, so that's really impressive.
As the filmmaker hopes, Suni and the Seven Princesses will continue spreading their powerful message.
It's incredible we've come this far. If we can do it at this age, young people can too.
Emphasizing that she's already very happy, she said her only wish is for her and the members to stay healthy. Park Kwon-woo, Arirang News, 7.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Tommy.
So let's start with the German election. The country's conservative opposition has claimed victory, now defeating the current chancellor's center-left Social Democratic Party. Tell us more.
That's right. Germany's conservative Christian Democratic Union, led by Friedrich Merz, has secured victory, positioning him as the next chancellor. On Sunday, the CDU and its sister party, the Christian Social Union, won the most votes in Germany's recent federal election. They picked up just under 30% of the votes, according to polling institute Infratest. Merz, the CDU leader, declared victory and pledged to reduce Germany's reliance on U.S. security, emphasizing a move towards greater independence. Meanwhile, the far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD, finished second with its strongest post-war performance. The AfD secured about 20% of the vote, reflecting a significant surge attributed to public concerns over migration and economic challenges. The SPD, led by outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz, experienced its worst post-war result, obtaining around 16.5% of the vote. Moving over to the Middle East, Israel has postponed the release of over 600 Palestinian prisoners, citing concerns over the humiliating nature of recent hostage return ceremonies conducted by Hamas. On Sunday local time, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced the indefinite delay of the release of 620 Palestinian prisoners. This is in response to what Israel describes as cynical and demeaning ceremonies orchestrated by Hamas during the handover of Israeli hostages. During the recent release of 6 Israeli captives, Hamas paraded the individuals before crowds in highly publicized events, a move Israel claims breaches the terms of the ceasefire agreement. Netanyahu has demanded assurances from Hamas to cease such practices before any further prisoner releases occur. In response, Hamas has accused Israel of not fulfilling its obligations under the ceasefire deal. The postponement raises concerns about the fragility of the ceasefire agreement. Over in Rome, Pope Francis remains in critical condition at the Gemelli Hospital due to a severe respiratory infection and early signs of kidney failure, according to the Vatican. Despite his health challenges, the Pope, aged 88, remains alert and has expressed gratitude for the global prayers supporting him. Also in a pre-recorded message, he marked the 3rd anniversary of the Ukraine conflict, describing it as a painful and shameful milestone for humanity. Meanwhile, dozens of people gathered beneath Pope Francis' hospital window, as well as at the Vatican, to pray for his recovery. Finally, in the United Kingdom, Peggy, a 5-year-old pug and Chinese crested mix, has won the Best Canine Newcomer Award at the FITUS Awards, an Academy Award for dogs in London. Peggy had been crowned Britain's ugliest dog in 2023 for her unique appearance, characterized by her sparse white hair and tongue sticking out. Those looks caught the attention of filmmakers, leading her to the role of Dogpool in the blockbuster Deadpool and Wolverine. On set, Peggy charmed co-stars Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, mastering tricks like jumping into Reynolds' arms. Her journey from rescue dog to successful silver screen star has inspired many to consider adopting rescue dogs.
We had another freezing start to the last work week of the month. Feels like temperatures were nearly 4 degrees lower than what readings say. However, the cold snap we have been experiencing should finally ease up this afternoon, and we can expect temperatures to rise above seasonal norms above the week. Meanwhile, eastern parts of Korea are dealing with extremely dry air levels. A dry weather warning has been expanded to more regions with strong winds. Be extra careful with fires, please. Afternoon highs will be 1 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday, topping out at 5 degrees Celsius here in the capital, 7 degrees in Daegu and Gyeongju. Mostly sunny skies with good air quality expected all day today. However, Ulleungdo and Dokdo will stay snowy through this morning. By the end of the week, temperatures in the capital could reach double digits, which is a welcome change. Skies will remain partly to mostly sunny in most parts of Korea throughout the week, so please enjoy the sunshine.
That is all we have for our morning edition of Arirang News. More stories making headlines coming at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.